Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chen. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know last week I had you all very concerned. I'm so thankful to all of you for your well wishes and just your kind words. Thank you guys so much. Things are still not 100% good, but they are a lot better now. And I feel like I can finally move forward. So that is what we're going to do. So without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed the next few chapters. Oh, right. Of 残疾暴君的掌心鱼宠. Looks like I need to get back in the groove of this. Chapter 93. Grand Fishy Wedding. Liu thought he could feel Prince Ting's gaze burning into him, but the waiting baby was more important, so Liu didn't have time to think about it too much. Baby bottles didn't exist in ancient times, so Liu thought of another way. He asked the wet nurse to squeeze the milk into a bowl. Then he picked up Dabao and a tiny silver spoon and started trying to spoon small amounts into Dabao's mouth. Dabao continued to scream, shaking his head desperately. Oh, did this child just not like milk? Thinking back on it, he always fed the fish babies top-quality fish food and peach blossom pastries. Perhaps that was the problem. The fish babies liked fresh sweets, not bland milk. But what could he do? At the moment, the babies weren't fully grown and didn't even have teeth. They could only drink milk. Liu said gently, Dabao, either you drink the milk or you go hungry. After being gently threatened by his fish dad, Dabao pouted, then drank the milk in the spoon with tears in his eyes. Liu's first attempt went smoothly, but the next time, Dabao accidentally choked. Now he refused to drink from the spoon no matter what. Liu thought about it, then ordered someone to bring a plate of peach blossom pastries and set them to the side. Dabao stared longingly at the peach blossom pastries with his sparkly black eyes. But it was no use. His unsympathetic fish dad only let him smell the pastry. When Dabao was momentarily distracted, Fish Dad slipped another spoonful of milk into his mouth. Prince Ting, who had been watching the entire time, realized he'd been mistaken. He'd been expecting a completely different kind of feeding. He walked toward Liu. Liu was holding Dabao, humming an unknown tune. When Prince Ting approached and saw the gentleness in his eyes, his heart felt soft. Imitating Liu, Prince Ting also picked up a child and fed him milk with another spoon. Occasionally, he'd glance at Liu. Liu giggled quietly. Prince Ting had chosen Sibao. The other three all looked like little chubs, and only Sibao looked a little bit like Liu. Prince Ting really liked to hold Sibao. Whenever Sibao was being held by his dad, he'd smile happily. As expected of the most confused baby, he hadn't noticed the difference between milk and fish food, and just wanted to be fed by his father. Sibao finished the milk incredibly quickly. When he was done, Prince Ting wanted to pick up Arbao, but Sambao kept his fingers clenched onto his collar, unwilling to leave his father's embrace. When Dabao was finished eating, he also grabbed onto Liu. Then, as he was trying to console him, Arbao and Sanbao started to cry even harder. They hadn't had their turns yet. Liu sighed in resignation. He and Prince Ting had no choice but to hold 2 children each. He felt like they were much better behaved when they were fish. When night fell and it was time to sleep, the baby still wouldn't let go. Liu discussed the issue with Prince Ting, his face red. Your Highness, they're still young. Maybe they're just not used to it. Let's let them sleep together with us. Before, when the fish babies were in the tank, they'd stayed in the same room as their dads, and Fish Dad slept beside them all the time. Why did they have to go to sleep with a stranger, the wet nurse, now that they were human? None of them were willing to do that. Being a human wasn't better than being a fish at all. They couldn't move or speak, and they could only drink boring old milk. This was way too hard. The fish babies wanted to be held by their fathers. Sob, 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 sob. Prince Ting had always doted on Li Yu. Since Li Yu was the one to suggest it, he resisted the urge to kick the 4 babies out and nodded. Li Yu first put all the babies on the bed, then lay down himself. These days, he only had 4 hours to be human. It would be fine if he took a little nap. Prince Ting would take care of everything for him. But as soon as he lay down, the children immediately craned their necks and stretched out, wanting to stick themselves to him. If they couldn't reach him, they'd start to cry. Li Yu had to make sure each child was touching him. Dabao claimed one of Li Yu's arms, Arbao and Sambao claimed the other one, while Sibao grabbed onto Li Yu's leg tightly. Once Li Yu was completely surrounded, all of the babies were satisfied, but Prince Ting, who felt like his wife was getting further and further away from him, was not. Li Yu touched his finger, looking at him apologetically. Prince Ting held his hand back, gently pinching his palm. Babies had very limited energy, and they were now fully fed. They each nodded off to dreamland quickly. Prince Ting waited until the 4 of them were fully asleep before handing each of them over to the wet nurse, expression stiff. Li Yu, surrounded by his babies, was about to nod off when he suddenly felt cold. Ah, his husband was here. Li Yu wrapped his arms familiarly around his shoulders. Their married life was very harmonious. Every couple of days, they'd have to absorb essence. If they ignored the whole pregnancy thing, Li Yu was very happy to absorb essence. But today, Prince Ting was a little different. He absorbed essence incredibly thoroughly. Li Yu's face was flushed, feeling both numb and tingly, and tears swam in his eyes. Originally, he hadn't thought he was capable either, but now he felt like something was about to come out. Was Prince Ting getting his revenge now for the time Li Yu accidentally bit him on the man's tit? Li Yu couldn't take this kind of stimulation. He felt like his soul was about to be sucked out of his body. He punched Prince Ting a few times, yelping. Prince Ting, who was doing his best to absorb the carp spirit's essence, glanced at the hourglass and then finally let go, holding onto Li Yu's waist instead. The next day, when they were feeding the babies, Prince Ting was looking down, focusing on feeding Sibao, while Li Yu held Dabao. Li Yu's chest was sore, and his legs were still shaking. Thinking back to the wild night he'd had, Li Yu couldn't resist glaring at the culprit. Prince Ting felt his fierce gaze. He smiled at him, then licked his lips salaciously. Seriously? He couldn't even speak, and he was still managing to attack Li Yu with brazen flirtation? Whatever. It was fine if his husband was like this. It wasn't as if he didn't benefit. With Li Yu's continuous encouragement, Dabao and the rest of the kids slowly started to get used to being human babies. That was when the Emperor's edict arrived from the capital, appointing Li Yu as Prince Ting's official consort. Prince Ting had done exactly as he'd promised and gotten Li Yu the title. Li Yu almost couldn't believe it himself. This wasn't just something the villagers on the streets called him casually. He was now Prince Ting's official consort, recognized by the Emperor himself. He was going to be recorded into the official family tree. Their marriage was set in stone. On the day the edict arrived, Prince Ting decided on the date of the wedding. Wang Xi had been preparing for it for a long time, and everything was ready, so they could hold the wedding whenever they wanted. Prince Ting was just annoyed that all the auspicious days were too far away and that he had to wait even longer. Li Yu was amused by this rare childishness from his husband. Thinking about how Prince Ting wanted to give him an official wedding, even though they already had children, Li Yu's heart felt like it was coated in sugar. The Emperor has already agreed. It's just a matter of time. Li Yu placated him, chuckling. Don't be impatient, Your Highness. Having tasted the sweetness of Li Yu's particular sort of comfort, Prince Ting continued to pout childishly, only calming down when Li Yu continued. At the same time, he asked Wang Xi to double-check everything that had to do with the wedding. It didn't take Wang Gongong long to check it all. The only thing that was left was the most important aspect of the wedding robes. Prince Sting's robes had been made to order far in advance, and there were several backup sets awaiting. Every single stitch had been inspected by Prince Sting, and all the accessories were made by artisans according to Prince Sting's designs, ensuring that each piece was completely unique. Li Yu hadn't tried on the consort's robes and accessories yet, but with Prince Sting's experience designing clothes for him, there was nothing to be worried about. Finally, the day of the wedding came. Prince Sting handed Li Yu his robes personally. There weren't that many servants, and Li Yu didn't have any family, so Prince Sting helped him change and do his hair himself. Soon, Li Yu was dressed in his bright red robes edged in gold, made from Yue Hua brocade. Apparently, clothes made from Yue Hua brocade gave off a serene radiance like the light of the moon, which was how it got the name Radiant Moon Brocade. The Yue Hua brocade was woven with gold thread and phoenix feather thread, and embroidered with a majestic koi fish leaping amongst the clouds over the gate. A fish pattern was embroidered all along the collar and long train, shimmering with extraordinary brilliance. The belt was woven from soft gold thread and made to look like aquatic plant leaves. Though it appeared thick, it was actually very light. A few small, cute golden fish hung from the belt, tinkling as they moved. To match the outfit, there was a ruby and pearl headpiece, topped with a circle of 36 small golden fish. Each fish was encrusted with rubies. A string of pearls fell from the fish's mouths, covering Li Yu's face slightly to keep him partially hidden. Li Yu never put on makeup before, but on this joyous day, he put on a bit of blush and lipstick, making him look even more radiant. After he'd made sure that Li Yu's entire outfit fit him perfectly, Prince Sting gave a small smile and went to change himself. Wang Xi waited on him and couldn't help but speak for the master. "Consort, according to the rules, your robe should be embroidered with a phoenix. His Highness asked the Emperor specifically for the changes to your robe." Wang Xi had been in charge of planning the wedding, so he knew exactly which things Prince Sting had worried about. Prince Sting didn't need Li Yu's gratitude, but Wang Gongong was very chatty and immediately revealed everything to the consort. Li Yu had seen Ye Qinghuan and the princess's wedding robes. He hadn't realized that even just the embroidery would require so much thought. He was suddenly overcome with gratitude. Soon, Prince Sting finished changing into matching wedding robes, except in black. Li Yu took a careful look and saw that Prince Sting's robes were still embroidered with the 4-clawed dragon, as expected of a prince. But their belts were the same, in the shape of aquatic leaves, and he tied the silver bead that Li Yu had once given him onto his belt as well. His sleeves and hem were also embroidered with the same fish pattern as Li Yu's robes. Wasn't he secretly showing off their love? Li Yu gave himself a thumbs up for being so perceptive and noticing all the beauty in the world. Prince Sting walked over, lowering his head as though he wanted to kiss him. As he did so, a section of red string appeared from beneath his robes. Li Yu smirked and pulled it out. He wanted to know what the prince was wearing on such an important day. Li Yu was wearing Prince Sting's little jade figure. As he suspected, Prince Sting was wearing his Fishy rock. Put together, they were a match made in heaven. "Your Highness, consort, the time has come." Wang Xi was so happy, he kept wiping his eyes. Prince Sting felt for Li Yu's hand beneath their robes, and the two exchanged a glance. Li Yu didn't have any family. His family was Prince Sting. Prince Sting helped him onto the wedding carriage, then sat inside himself. The red and green wedding carriage made a lap around Luofeng village, then returned to Prince Sting's residence for the bows. Plenty of villagers had come to witness the joyous occasion and followed behind the carriage. Li Yu lifted the curtain, feeling nervous as he looked down at the crowd of people. Prince Ting gave him an encouraging glance, and Li Yu gave a tentative wave to the audience. The villagers all knelt on the ground and cheered loudly. "Long live the consort!" The voices startled all the surrounding magpies into the air. Li Yu's heart leapt. In this moment, he really felt like he belonged to this ancient world. Dabao, Arbao, Sanbao, and Sibao were lying in a row on the bed. Today, there was only the wet nurse and no dads. They were utterly dejected. Faint music could be heard from outside. Sibao remembered that the wet nurse had said his dads were getting married today. He didn't know what getting married meant, but it must have been a good thing. Sibao attempted to flip himself upright, but failed. He waved his arms around angrily. I want to go to our daddy's wedding. Sanbao also started to wave his limbs around, following his example. I want to go. Arbao turned to look at them. How? Arbao, Sanbao, and Sibao each took turns ing at each other. After coming to an agreement, with Sibao in the lead, they all did their best to roll down from the bed. If they wanted to see their dads get married, they first had to get off the bed. Although babies weren't very strong, they could still achieve their goal by rolling. But they weren't even a month old yet. Once they rolled over, they couldn't roll back. Arbao, Sanbao, and Sibao all lay face down on the bed. Save us! Dabao had witnessed everything. He gave a dismissive wave of his hand. You're all so stupid. Chapter 94. One Fishy Family. Prince Ting mentally kept track of Xiao Yu's transformation time. Although they took a lap around the village, the carriage sped up as much as possible when there were not a lot of people. The carriage driver had received a unique task. On the day of the wedding, he had to drive quickly, but not so quickly it disturbed Prince Ting and his consort. The driver was an old servant of Prince Ting's. In order to celebrate him finally getting married, he really went all out, practicing for this specifically for a month. Along the way, Prince Ting's guards were in charge of security, stopping any overexcited villagers from getting too close. Once the carriage safely returned to Prince Ting's residence, the next step was the wedding vows. The emperor was in the faraway capital, unable to attend Prince Ting's wedding, but that didn't stop his need to reward. It took Wang Xi over an hour just to read the gift list. The group bearing gifts from the emperor lined up all the way from the room where the ceremony was taking place to the outside of the entire residence. There weren't too many guests invited to this wedding. Prince Ting wasn't a fan of commotion, but this was his and Xiao Yu's wedding. He couldn't just have a bunch of empty seats. So, he asked the village head to bring some of the respected elders in the village as important guests. Auntie Xu, who was close with Li Yu, was also invited. Most of the guests weren't nobles or aristocrats, but the couple didn't receive any less congratulations. At the ceremony, where one's parents would usually sit, sat the emperor's edict, as well as Empress Xiaohui's memorial tablet. Just as Prince Ting signaled for the host to start the ceremony, a horse suddenly arrived. Ye Qinghuan got off the horse, travel-worn, and rushed to the ceremony excitedly. After they found out about Prince Ting's wedding, the House of Changle had to send someone no matter what. Ye Shutze had volunteered, at least in part because he missed his cousin, who he hadn't seen in nearly a year. Tianchi, it's finally my turn to congratulate you on your marriage. Ye Qinghuan smiled and patted Prince Ting on the shoulder. For once, Prince Ting didn't brush him off. Instead, he smiled lightly and ordered Wang Xi to bring over a cup of wine. They drank it together. After drinking the marriage wine, Ye Qinghuan was feeling chatty. Besides, he had a lot to talk about. When Prince Ting had first left the capital, he'd sent a letter to the House of Changan, asking them to be patient, observant, and flexible. They could not beg for mercy on his behalf, nor should they write any letters to the western border. After Prince Ting left, aside from the Duke of Changan, who seemed to have limitless patience, everyone else was worried for him. In the past year, Prince Ting had suffered bandit attacks and locust infestations, and had even had to give away his job at the Ministry of Rights to the sixth prince. Yet Qinghuan nearly went to beg the emperor to let Prince Ting come back. Fortunately, the old Duke of Changan had managed to convince him in time, asking him to trust Prince Ting. The old Duke of Changan could see what was going on. Prince Ting was currently in a very delicate situation. If the House of Changan stepped in, not only would they be unable to help Prince Ting, they would cause all of Prince Ting's efforts to go to waste. Yet Qinghuan could only wait for something to happen. The wait lasted until Prince Ting asked the emperor for Li Yu's hand in marriage, and the emperor agreed. Yet Qinghuan had met Li Gongzi before. Not only had they met, the entire House of Changan loved Li Gongzi, and they all thought this was a good match. Yet Qinghuan kept following the former duke's orders and never said anything. But Li Gongzi was a man. That was an indisputable fact. What about Prince Ting's future children? Ye Qian kept his mouth shut too and didn't tell Ye Qinghuan that Li Yu had already given Prince Ting 4 little Gongzi, and the matter of heirs had long since been a non-issue. As a result, currently Ye Qinghuan really wanted to comfort Prince Ting. "Don't worry, there will always be solutions when it comes to your heirs," Ye Qinghuan said quietly, pulling Prince Ting to the side. "I shouldn't say this to ruin your special day, but my parents have both worked out a solution for you. As long as you have children, Li Gongzi won't have to face judgment and blame in the future. If you don't want Li Gongzi to suffer, you can find a kid of royal blood and adopt them. There must be someone suitable." Prince Ting raised a brow, put down his cup, and shook his head. Ye Qinghuan thought he knew Prince Ting well enough to guess his thoughts and tried, Do you perhaps look down on other people's blood?" He didn't just look down on them. Prince Ting nodded. Ye Qinghuan said, "If no one else, what about me?" He scratched his head, saying, "This is just a thought. The princess is already pregnant. I should be able to convince her to give you our next son. Don't misunderstand. I don't want to do this either. If it doesn't suit you, of course I would be happy to keep him." Ye Qinghuan's tone grew solemn, as though he couldn't bear to part with his flesh and blood. Prince Ting didn't know how Ye Qinghuan had ended up here. He coughed lightly. When Wang Xi heard, he immediately brought the wet nurse over with the child. "Your Highness, the young masters are crying so hard. This old servant had no choice but to bring them to the ceremony." Wang Xi didn't dare tell him that in the brief moment the wet nurse had left, 3 out of the 4 young masters had flipped over and couldn't get back up again. They had nearly drowned in their tears and were inconsolable, no matter what the wet nurse did. Wang Xi thought that since it was lively here, perhaps the young masters would enjoy it, and decided to bring them to the ceremony. But now that they were out and had spotted Prince Ting and his consort, there was no way they would leave. The young masters wanted to see their dads get married. Prince Ting also missed his sons and gestured Ye Qinghuan over to take a look. Ye Qinghuan was completely bewildered when he saw the 4 babies. Each one was wrapped in a different colored swaddling cloth, gold and silver mixed, silver and black, and held in the arms of Wang Xi and a woman. Who was this? What relationship did she have with Prince Ting? Ye Qinghuan was confused. Wang Xi chuckled. "The young masters insisted on wearing this. The wet nurse wanted to change them into something more celebratory, but they wouldn't let her. They started crying immediately." Prince Ting nodded, not assigning any blame. Wang Xi didn't know, but he knew the colors of these swaddles were the fish baby's original colors. Prince Ting took Sibao from the wet nurse and expertly patted his back. Ye Qinghuan's eyeballs nearly popped out of his head. He couldn't help but ask, "Wang Xi, whose babies are—" Why did Wang Xi call them young masters? And why was Prince Ting so experienced with picking them up? Wang Xi slapped himself on the forehead and said, "Yes, Shutze, So sorry. This old servant was so busy being happy he forgot to introduce you. These are His Highness's children. The consort gave birth to them. Li Yu could give birth? Ye Qinghuan was thoroughly stunned. He slowly turned around to stare at Prince Ting, whose expression was full of pride. Wang Xi's words were too shocking. Ye Qinghuan needed time to adjust. Li Yu had given Prince Ting 4 kids? Men could get pregnant too? Wang Xi had no choice but to give Ye Shizi, who was about to pass out, a brief explanation. Although Wang Gongong wasn't clear on the details either, Prince Ting had seen the whole process through. Plus, there was the gynecological expert, the other physicians, and the 4 young masters as proof. He could swear to the heavens it was real. Ye Qinghuan could also tell that 3 of the babies looked a lot like Prince Ting when he was younger. The one that Prince Ting was holding looked a lot like Li Yu. If it was fake, how could it all seem so real? Wait, Ye Qinghuan suddenly realized. He'd thought Prince Ting was childless, but he actually already had 4 healthy sons? Meanwhile, he, whose wife was still pregnant, had lost again. Ugh. Prince Ting knew Ye Qinghuan had mentioned adopting because he was being considerate of him, not because he wanted to be offensive, so he wasn't angry. He was just annoyed Ye Qinghuan was still standing there being a bother. They'd only had a brief moment of brotherly companionship before he wanted Ye Shizi to go somewhere else. There wasn't much time left, so the wedding vows had to happen soon. They had to do it during the pre-calculated auspicious time. Prince Ting gave the host another look, and they immediately started the ceremony. Li Yu wasn't used to such finery. All the pearls dangling into his field of vision were a little distracting. Prince Ting quickly walked to his side. "Your Highness," Li Yu called out with a smile. Prince Ting really couldn't smile enough today. He reached out, and a warm hand enveloped his. As soon as their hands touched, all the commotion in the room settled down. Li Yu eyed a brazier to the side. What was going on? Did the consort have to step over it too? He was worried he'd kick the brazier over with how clumsy he was, or burn the expensive wedding robes. Neither seemed particularly lucky, but as he was fretting, Prince Ting wrapped his arm around him and picked him up lightly. Li Yu felt his feet leave the ground and his mind went blank. In an instant, he was back on the ground, with the brazier behind him. Li Yu's face was bright red. Not even the pearls on his headdress could hide his embarrassment. Prince Ting had actually carried him over the brazier in front of everyone. The prince was so smooth, the guests all laughed amicably. Ye Qinghuan laughed the loudest, and the xinyang behind them also went bright red. It was finally time to do their bows. Li Yu stood at Prince Ting's side. The 2 of them sincerely bowed to the heavens and earth and Prince Ting's parents. Finally, there was a deep bow between the couple. To be honest, they had been married since the day they signed the wedding contract. This was just a declaration to the rest of the world, declaring that from now on, you are mine and I'm yours. Prince Ting told Wang Xi to take care of the guests as he and Li Yu went back to their room. He'd already formed the habit of regularly checking the silver hourglass. Li Yu's transformation time was almost up, so he had to keep an eye on him. On such a special day, he couldn't let Xiao Yu experience even a sliver of panic or shock. Once all the guests had left, Prince Ting used a traditional rod to part the pearls covering Li Yu's face. The 2 of them stared at each other for a while, then smiled at the same time. Prince Ting reached into his sleeve as Li Yu stared at him in anticipation. He guessed the prince had some notes prepared, or perhaps a special gift for the occasion. But Prince Ting didn't produce anything strange. It was just a long oval box. Inside was a rolled-up painting. Li Yu unrolled the painting under Prince Ting's watchful gaze. Prince Ting had painted a school of fish. There was a total of 6 lifelike fish, 2 large and 4 small. One of the big ones was silver, speckled with gold, exactly like Li Yu's fish form, and the small ones were gold and silver, and black. It was clearly the 4 fish babies. But that wasn't right. Li Yu counted again and again. Him and the babies should make 5. Who was the extra large black fish in the painting? Li Yu thought about it for a while. It wasn't until he caught sight of Prince Sing's black robes that he realized Prince Sing had drawn himself as a big black fish. This was clearly a painting of their family. Li Yu especially liked this large, majestic black fish. He looked at it for a while before he finally, a little reluctantly, put the painting away. "Thank you for the gift, Your Highness." Having given his wedding gift, Prince Sing once again picked up the pair of jade cups they drunk from the day they consummated their marriage and filled them with green plum wine. This time, Li Yu drank first and playfully passed the wine to him with his mouth. Sand slowly trickled down the silver hourglass. 2 figures rolled together on the marital bed, unable to part. Just as things were at a burning point, wave after wave of infant wails came from the next room. The 2 of them stopped and stared at each other. Li Yu was still panting. Your Highness," he pleaded pitifully, "the children." This was the annoying part about being a dad. You couldn't just enjoy yourself and forget about the kids. Prince Sing caught his breath, resigned, and went to the next room to bring the kids over. Dabao, Arbao, Sanbao, and Sibao's faces were all scrunched up from crying. They'd finally made it to the marriage ceremony, but their fish dad hadn't even noticed them. Soon after, their dads had disappeared, and their wet nurse had brought them back. They hadn't even received a comforting hug. Even Dabao, who considered himself the most mature, was about to explode. Prince Sing was the first one to appear. The other babies all quieted down immediately. But Sibao, who was crying too hard and couldn't stop, accidentally started to hiccup. Prince Sing shook his head. With 2 children in each arm, he moved them all to their room. The babies finally saw their fish dad on the marital bed, and they all grabbed at him, wanting to sleep with him. Li Yu was surrounded again. He thought he had made another mistake. His lovely wedding night was ruined just like that. He was just about to apologize to Prince Sing when Prince Sing lay down, blinked at him, and then pulled him down into his arms to rest on top of him. That way, even if they were surrounded by their children, the 2 of them wouldn't be separated. "Your Highness, aren't I heavy?" Li Yu rested his head on Prince Sing's shoulder, afraid of crushing the man under him. Prince Sing shook his head and turned all the children's faces away. Wrapping his arms around Li Yu's waist, while Li Yu was still talking, he planted kisses on his lips again and again. Li Yu had no choice but to shut up. The kids were right there. He couldn't make any weird noises. Squeezed tightly together, the 2 of them continued to kiss, on and off, full of love. They waited for the kids to fall asleep, for Li Yu's time to run out, and for him to transform into a fish. Then, when it was past midnight again, he would turn back into a human. No matter how long the wait was, they would always find the time that belonged only to the 2 of them and devour each other to their heart's content. Chapter 95. Merman Manmer. No ordinary person would dare disturb Prince Sing's marital night. But Ye Qinghuan was not an ordinary person. Wang Xi had taken care of all the guests. After everyone had a few cups of celebratory wine, they all bid their goodbyes. Only Ye Qinghuan made his way to the bedroom. Wang Xi stopped him with a smile. "Ye Shuzi, did you want to be thrown out by His Highness again?" Prince Sing had ordered that no one be allowed near their bedroom. Even if Wang Xi himself wanted to interrupt, he was powerless. "There's a Trenju in town, a roast duck restaurant. His Highness had it open for the consort. Due to the special occasion, all the roast duck is free today. If Ye Shuzi is bored, you can take a walk there." Wang Xi had even planned a place for Ye Shuzi to go. Ye Qinghuan had originally wanted to sneak a listen so he could make fun of Prince Sing a little in the future, but he hadn't expected Wang Xi to stop him like this. He'd even been forced to witness Wang Gongong showing off his master's generosity, and now he was too embarrassed to stay. The candles had already been blown out inside, so there wasn't anything fun he could witness anyway. Just as he was thinking roast duck actually sounded pretty good, the door was suddenly opened from the inside. Prince Ting walked out half naked in a hurry, holding something wrapped up in a piece of clothing in his hand, and ran right into Wang Xi and Ye Qinghuan. Prince Ting nodded calmly, protecting the thing in his arms without blinking, and walked next door. Ye Qinghuan and Wang Xi were stunned into silence. Ye Qinghuan had good eyesight. Within the clothing in Prince Ting's arms, he'd caught a glimpse of a section of a fish's tail, the tail of Prince Ting's favorite fish, the one that was silver speckled with gold. Ye Qinghuan remembered it well. There's no way he could have mistaken it. What had happened just now? Ye Qinghuan was shocked. After a while, he asked Wang Xi, stammering, "Wang Gonggong, Prince Ting, how could he run out carrying a fish on the night of his wedding, in such a state of undress?" Wang Xi was also very shocked, but clearly had more experience than Ye Shizi. In his eyes, Prince Ting could do no wrong. He quickly recovered and said, as though it were no big deal, "Shizi, His Highness is just like that." Like what? Was Prince Ting into that kind of thing? Ye Qinghuan didn't know if he should sympathize with the newlywed consort or the fish in Prince Ting's hands. Li Yu hid himself in Prince Ting's arms, too afraid to peek out. This wasn't the first time Prince Ting had taken care of him after he transformed, so he wasn't worried at all. But because this was the night of their marriage, they hadn't had much opportunity to think after the fish babies went to sleep. They didn't realize until Li Yu was about to transform that there was no fish tank in the bedroom. Wang Xi had good intentions. When he arranged the room, he'd been afraid that the two masters would knock into it if they got too drunk, so he had the fish tank moved next door. Since it was their wedding night, Li Yu and Prince Ting were so focused on each other that they hadn't noticed in time. Li Yu only realized what was wrong when he'd already transformed. Prince Ting had an idea where the fish tank might have been moved to and rushed out with Li Yu to find it. At least they could say they were the only ones in history to experience a wedding night this chaotic. Prince Ting moved very quickly, not wanting to alert anyone, but he never expected to run into Ye Qinghuan and Wang Xi. Li Yu took a deep breath. Good thing those two didn't know anything. Otherwise, as a consort, he would never be able to face anyone ever again. Prince Ting put Li Yu safely in the tank. While he waited to turn back into a human, Li Yu started to wonder whether or not he should ask the system when he could end this lifestyle of transforming back and forth all the time. It would be several years before the fish babies had to transform again. It wasn't fair that he, their fish dad, always had to live in fear that his identity would be revealed, right? Since the growing up quest, the system had disappeared. No further quests had popped up. Prince Ting took care of Li Yu, his days passing peacefully. Sometimes he couldn't help but think that continuing like this would be fine too. But after this heart-pounding experience, he wanted to turn completely into a human. Before he got to any of that, though, he had the rest of his wedding night left. The kids were still asleep in the bedroom. They might as well use this as a chance to escape and change the scenery. In the end, Prince Ting and his consort spent their wedding night next door. The next morning, Li Yu was draped over his silver rock bed like a fish pancake. Prince Ting prepared his favorite food, wrapped him in the leaf blanket, and then went to see the fish babies, feeling refreshed. As the man with the most authority in the western border, Prince Ting hadn't just given himself a wedding vacation. All the villagers were given time off to celebrate too. But as soon as he turned the corner, he ran into Ye Shizi with dark circles under his eyes. Ye Qinghuan had accidentally discovered Prince Ting's secret, and he couldn't be more anxious. He'd gone to Changle and devoured 3 whole roast ducks, but it hadn't helped. When he got back, he realized Prince Ting still hadn't returned to his bedroom, so his worry only grew. Li Yu was his friend, and Prince Ting was his cousin. Someone the entire house of Changle had to follow. Rationally, Ye Qinghua knew whose side he should be on, but emotionally, he couldn't just do nothing. You've only just gotten married to Li Gongzi. Don't do anything that would hurt him. Ye Qinghua threw down those words, then left. Prince Ting had no idea what that was about. He decided to ignore him. Sometime later, Wang Xi came over, not sure what to say to him. Your Highness, this old servant will just say one thing. You have to be good to the consort in the future. Prince Ting really didn't know what those two were thinking. Li Yu, the fish pancake, entered the system after catching up on his sleep. He'd felt like he vaguely heard the system last night, but he wasn't sure. The system always tried to give him notifications when he was busy doing things. Now that he thought about it, he realized he hadn't entered this mental world in a while. The last time was when he'd collected the reward for growing up. The fish babies had all turned into human babies that time, and he was worried about how to explain the fish's absence to Wang Gongong. The 4 fish babies disappeared together, then he gave birth to 4 children. Was that suspicious? Fortunately, the reward from the system was 4 plushies that corresponded with the baby fish. That had saved him a lot of worry. The fish babies now each had their own fish plushies, and Li Yu had a great idea. With the help of Prince Ting, he'd attached a magnet to each baby fish's mouth and tail, as well as their own plush. That way, the plushies could form a line, the same way they would play with the babies. Although the fish scamming system was a huge fraud most of the time, sometimes it really did pay attention to the details. After transmigrating as a fish, he'd been forced to complete many quests, all because of the system. But he'd found his other half in this book, and that was because of the system too. Li Yu had once hated the system, but now he wasn't sure how he felt. He checked the main quest line as usual and noticed a new quest had lit up. So, there really had been a notification last night. After all, they were officially husbands now. They even had the Emperor's approval. Their relationship had gone up another level, so it was time for the main quest to update. The next quest was postpartum care for fish? I remember this one. Li Yu felt incredibly embarrassed. Before, he'd just thought all the quest names were slightly weird. He'd already given birth to the fish, so what was there to still care for? Oh, right. He was now considered postpartum, right? Li Yu looked at the description calmly. With the system's usual behavior, it once again had to be separated into steps. You thought there was only one quest? Actually, it's several quests dressed up as one. This quest line... Wait, Li Yu suddenly realized that 2 of the steps were already completed. Postpartum care step 1. Incubate and hatch the eggs. Complete. Reward awaiting collection. Postpartum care step 2. Feed the young fish. Complete. Reward awaiting collection. Li Yu thought about it for a moment. Hadn't these 2 steps happened while he and Prince Ting were just learning how to take care of the fish babies? At that time, the main quest was still under determination, and nothing had happened. After getting married, the user and the tyrant can no longer be separated, the system explained. You have now reached the requirements for the next quest line, postpartum care. This quest line is different from the others. It will mainly be the tyrant who will be completing these quests. When the first 2 steps were in progress, although the quest line hadn't begun yet, it still had a great effect on the fish babies. Now, the system has completed its determination. Li Yu understood. Postpartum care was mainly Prince Ting's responsibility. All he had to do was lay there. It wasn't his fault he and the babies were the ones who needed care. As expected of the protagonist, though, Prince Ting had managed to complete 2 in one go. What rewards do these 2 steps give? Asked Li Yu, curious. If the person completing the quests is Prince Ting, does he get the rewards? But his husband probably didn't need anything other than him. The user will still receive the rewards. Each reward is one of the Tyrant's secrets. Ah, more secrets. Liu was in no hurry to claim them. He'd just saved them. Perhaps they'd be useful in the future. Compared to Prince Sing's secrets, he was more concerned with how to become a proper human, so he asked, "This is already the third main quest line. When can I become a human?" A notification immediately popped up. The third quest line in the postpartum care quest line is the time-limited quest, Protect the Pet Fish. The reward involves returning to human form. Do you want to start the quest? Liu was delighted. Every other time he asked about this, he'd never gotten an answer. This time, the answer came immediately. He could see the light at the end of the tunnel. "What kind of quest is it exactly?" he asked. Protect the Pet Fish was way too general. Since this related to whether the user could return to human form permanently, the system explained in detail for once. The time limit is 3 days. After accepting the quest, the user will turn into a Merman or Manmer and be unable to move freely. You need the Tyrant to protect you during this time. If you are discovered at any point, you will fail the quest. Please choose carefully, user. So, a quest where he needed to be protected. He knew what a merman was, but what was a Manmer? Mermen are human on top and fish on the bottom. Manmers are the opposite, fish on top and human on the bottom. In other words, in this quest, he will become half human, half fish, but also not a human and not a fish. It was so over. Now he was going to seem even more like a carp spirit. It was fine if he just turned into a fish. If he turned into a merman or manmer, he'd be lucky to get Prince Sing to stay in the room with him, let alone protect him. In Legend of the White Snake, the half-human, half-snake Yao had scared the scholar to death. Did anyone want to read more about that? Liu forced himself to calm down. If he accidentally pressed accept because he was shaking, he might immediately turn into a creature that was neither human nor fish. He only had one chance to complete this quest, so it was probably best to warn Prince Sing first. He wanted to succeed, of course. Once he did, his happy future was waiting for him. Liu exited the system. Once he found a good opportunity to turn human, he asked in a quiet voice, "Your Highness, I have a tribulation I need to get through. Can you help me?" Chapter 96, Fishy Tribulation. Because Liu kept the system a secret and pretended he was a carp spirit, when he explained what was going on to Prince Sing, he framed it as a tribulation. Essentially, he had to pick a time to go through this tribulation, lasting around 3 days. He'd be in a half-human, half-fish state and needed Prince Sing's protection and care. Prince Sing listened quietly, holding his hand tightly as Liu recounted the task quickly. Occasionally, Prince Sing's brow would furrow in thought, but he never let go of his hand. "I don't have to go through it immediately," he said, not wanting to put too much pressure on Prince Sing. "We can take it slow and choose somewhere no one will disturb me. But when the time comes, I'll look really weird, and I won't be able to move. Please prepare lots of fresh water and food for me, and don't let anyone see me. That's all." Although the task was protect the pet fish, he'd be turning into something that wasn't quite human or fish. He definitely would be staying inside so he wouldn't put himself in danger. That way, the quest would be a little easier too. Prince Sing, however, gave it a lot more consideration than him. Picking up a brush and paper, he wrote, "Wait for me for a few days. I'll ensure your safety." Liu read the words over and over again, his chest feeling warm. "Your Highness, don't you want to ask what I will turn into?" Prince Sing held his hand and smiled. He wrote, "No matter what you look like, you are you." "All right. Then please don't laugh at me when the time comes, Your Highness," Liu said, trying to sound casual. When people were in love, they often hoped to look their best in front of the person they loved. Li Yu secretly felt like that as well. He'd only just gotten married, and although he wasn't beautiful enough to cause the downfall of a country, he was at least a pretty little cutie. Subconsciously, he didn't want Prince Ting to see him as a weird fish-human monstrosity. Being a merman was fine, but if he was fish on top and human on the bottom, he'd be basically a monster. It was already difficult enough to turn into a fish in front of Prince Ting, and now the system wanted him to be something in between? Time after time, the fish system only got more scammy instead of less. If he wanted to complete this mission and become human for good, he had no other choice, no matter how reluctant he felt. Prince Ting had to be the one to complete this mission. He couldn't just get around it with a lie. Even if Prince Ting had always treated him well, Li Yu was still uneasy. But just a few words from Prince Ting were enough to chase away all his worries. For a moment, he couldn't control his own emotions. He had to turn around. Don't misunderstand. He only cried when he was sad. Right now, he was just so moved that his throat felt a little uncomfortable. Thinking of all the ways Prince Ting took care of him, Li Yu thought he should trust him. Perhaps a merman and a Manmer would be very scary. Perhaps Prince Ting would be shocked, but he would never let him down. Prince Ting misinterpreted Li Yu's emotional turmoil, thinking he was worried that his tribulation wouldn't go well. He wrote more. "Don't worry, I won't make you wait long." Li Yu's lips curved up and he nodded forcefully. Ever since he got together with Prince Ting and they got married, he'd always felt very safe. Now that they'd talked about it, Prince Ting knew Li Yu had to go through a tribulation, so he made a lot of preparations. The emperor often mentioned the babies in his letters these days. Although it was just a sentence here or there, Prince Ting suspected his family of 6 wouldn't be stuck at the western border for much longer. But the babies were still young. Even if the emperor wanted to see them, Prince Ting didn't want them to suffer through traveling. He would at least try to delay until they stopped breastfeeding. Although Xiao Yu said he wasn't in a rush to go through his tribulation and that they could take their time, he thought it was best if they did it sooner rather than later. It would be better to do it while they were still on the western border, because here he was in charge. He could even make up excuses for Li Yu getting pregnant and giving birth. If they returned to the capital, there would be many restrictions, and he was worried Xiao Yu's identity would be revealed. As he saw it, these few days right after the wedding were the best time. He'd taken care of most of his work in advance, and no one would disturb him while he was on his break. But if he and Xiao Yu went to deal with this tribulation, they would have to leave the kids to Wangxi. Luckily, Ye Qinghuan hadn't left yet, so they could at least conscript him to help. At Luofeng village, apart from the residence the village head had prepared for Prince Ting, Wangxi had also secretly purchased a few different properties, just in case. Prince Ting picked one that was not far from his regular residence. It was connected via a secret tunnel, making it perfect for this situation. If anything were to happen, he could return quickly. With the location chosen, Prince Ting told Li Yu his plans. Li Yu was shocked at how fastidious Prince Ting was. He was rather embarrassed. He'd only thought of preparing food and water, but Prince Ting had thought about where to stay and what to do with the kids. He really didn't have anything to add. Li Yu didn't need to worry about anything. Prince Ting secretly ordered the house to be cleaned out and prepared as soon as possible, then ordered Auntie Xu to prepare lots of Li Yu's favorite foods. Altogether, the human and fish food took up an entire cart. Never mind 3 days. They were prepared for 30. Prince Ting was the person who commanded the most authority and respect in the western border. He didn't need to let anyone know where he was taking his consort, but he still had to give everyone other than Wangxi and Ye Qinghuan an explanation. His first thought was to pretend to go hunting, but he rarely hunted even when he was at the capital, so this excuse was a little bit flimsy. Li Yu wanted to help. He suddenly had an idea. A honeymoon excuse. "Your Highness, Where I'm from, after they get married, people usually have a honeymoon, which is when the newlyweds go on a trip to have fun and relax. Li Yu thought he'd lost a great opportunity. Why did he have to be so honest and tell Prince Ting the quest would take 3 days? He should have said it would take longer so they could have more time together in their own little world. Prince Ting fully believed him about the honeymoon, though, and relayed the information to Ye Qinghuan and Wang Xi. When Wang Gongong found out His Highness and the consort were going somewhere alone, he couldn't be happier. There were already 4 young masters. Perhaps this time they could return with a few new young ladies? Wang Gongong agreed happily and immediately used what he'd just learned to wish His Highness and the consort a happy honeymoon. Ye Qinghuan was not so happy. Ye Shitze, who had been recruited to work, said with a fierce expression, "Why do I have to take care of your children for you while you go on your honeymoon?" Prince Ting glanced at Wang Xi, and Wang Xi laughed. "Shitze, His Highness says letting you take care of them is a way of showing you respect." "Bullshit," Ye Qinghuan said. "I came to drink your marriage wine. I'm a guest. How can you make a guest work for you? Either way, you have to let me come along during the honeymoon." Prince Ting glared at him judgmentally. Xiao Yu had said honeymoons were for couples. Those who wanted to interrupt a couple's honeymoon were what Xiao Yu had called wheels. It didn't matter whether or not Ye Qinghuan agreed. When the time came, Prince Ting with Li Yu and the 4 kids were handed to Ye Qinghuan. The fish babies couldn't speak or move right now, but they could listen. Through various conversations, they figured out their dads were leaving and were handing them over to Wang Gongong and Ye Shushu. The fish babies were very familiar with Wang Gongong. When Wang Gongong was looking after them, all of them were very well behaved. But this was the first time they were meeting Ye Shushu. The babies were never very polite when it came to strangers. Ye Qinghuan was about to become a dad himself. Just because Prince Ting was rude didn't mean Ye Shitze couldn't take care of the kids. But he'd only just met these 3 chubby babies who all looked a lot like a younger Prince Ting, so it took a long time before he finally managed to differentiate Dabao, Arbao, and Sanbao. Out of the 3, Arbao and Sanbao started crying as soon as they saw him, giving him a headache. Dabao's expression remained serious. Ye Qinghuan had been beaten up by little chubs when he was young. For a moment, he thought he was looking at the real deal and felt a little fear in his heart. He touched his nose, feeling like he was thinking too much, but then his eyes met the judgmental gaze of this child. What's going on? I want to beat him up." But Ye Shitze was an adult. He couldn't harm a defenseless baby who didn't know anything, so nothing ended up happening. Ye Qinghuan picked up Arbao and Sanbao, then stuffed Dabao into his arms as well, his movements clumsy. He took this opportunity to practice. Soon, his own child would be born, after all. Ye Qinghuan touched the 3 children's heads and couldn't help but smile. Oh, there was also Sibao. He looked a lot like Li Yu and didn't seem as mischievous as the other 3. He was always smiling brightly. "Sibao, call me Shushu." Ye Qinghuan got excited, pinching Sibao on one tender cheek. What a classic example of bullying the weak. Sibao remained smiling, then suddenly bit Ye Shitze's hand. Although he had no teeth, his gums left 2 red marks behind. Ye Shitze howled like a banshee. Li Yu and Prince Ting soon arrived at the secret residence. Prince Ting wasted no time sending everyone off, leaving only the 2 of them. They had brought plenty of food, and Prince Ting had ordered someone to dig a pond in the garden. It was filled with clear water, and they had brought the fish tank along as well. "Your Highness," Li Yu announced, "I am going to start." Prince Ting grabbed him and pulled out a silk pouch, handing it to Li Yu. "What's this?" Li Yu asked. Prince Ting was always finding new gifts to give him. Prince Ting gestured for him to open it, so Li Yu did. Inside lay an old protective charm and a note. The note described where the protective charm came from. This was the protective charm Empress Xiao Hui had gotten for Prince Ting before he was born. This was technically something she passed down to him, so Prince Ting had kept it safe ever since and had never worn it. The night before he came to the western border, he'd made sure to ask someone to bring the charm to Liao Zhen for him to bless. It had all been for this moment. Tribulations for Yao were usually very dangerous. Prince Ting firmly believed this protective charm would keep Li Yu safe. Your Highness, thank you. Li Yu sniffled and hung the charm around his neck. His emotions were complicated. He knew very well that he wasn't going through any tribulation, and this charm was just a piece of paper. Even if anything did happen, the charm would be completely useless. But now all of Prince Ting's trust and sincerity would be concentrated on this charm, all because of a white lie he had told. He knew he'd had no other choice, but he still felt regretful at this moment. It was time to start. Prince Ting nodded at him slightly. Li Yu made his last request. Your Highness, can you turn around? He didn't know what he was going to look like. He had to give both Prince Ting and himself a bit of a buffer. Prince Ting was always very understanding when it came to him, and he immediately turned around as asked. Li Yu gritted his teeth and quickly entered the system. When the system asked him if he'd like to start the quest, he chose yes without hesitating. Something abruptly occurred to him. The system said he would appear as a merman and Manmer, one after another. What would be first? ... When Li Yu came to again, he felt surrounded by coldness. His face felt a little itchy, and when he looked down, his feet and legs were all accounted for. Li Yu thought he hadn't changed yet, but when he opened his mouth, he found he couldn't speak. When he took another look, he realized his hands had turned into fins. This was when he realized the quest had already started. It was different from his fish form. His fish form was a whole fish and much smaller than a human. But right now, his legs and feet were still human, meaning he hadn't changed in size, but his hands... He was a Manmer! The bottom half was human, and the top half was... Li Yu immediately tried to cover his face, but his fins were too short. Soon, he could no longer breathe. Even though he was half human and half fish, the half fish still needed water. Li Yu didn't even dare look at himself, let alone tell Prince Ting to turn around. He quickly used his feet to hook over a piece of cloth he'd prepared beforehand and tried to cover up his top half. With the cloth draped over his fish head, Li Yu ran into the garden and threw himself into the water. Even if he had faith in Prince Ting, he still didn't want... Sob. He didn't dare look at himself, so he wanted Prince Ting to see him even less. Prince Ting heard a splash, and Li Yu was already in the water. What happened? Prince Ting stood by the pond for a while, not sure what had happened to Li Yu. The pond here wasn't as deep as the one in Prince Ting's manor. On the shore, Prince Ting could vaguely make out Li Yu's form. He realized Xiao Yu didn't seem to have fully transformed. Considering Li Yu had suffered a cold the last time he hid at the bottom of the pool and refused to come out, Prince Ting was worried he would catch one this time as well. Soon, he decided to get in the water too. Just as he was about to take off his outer robe, the water rippled, and the person in the water came to the surface. Xiao Yu? Prince Ting was very worried. Li Yu was standing in the water silently, his upper half completely wrapped in the cloth. There were 2 holes in the cloth. Li Yu looked at Prince Ting out of them. Sob. Your Highness, don't come closer. Neither of them could speak. Li Yu watched Prince Ting nervously. As soon as the prince took a step forward, he would take one back. After a few repeats of this, Prince Ting could tell he was avoiding him. Prince Ting thought for a moment, then reached out to pull Li Yu out of the water. Li Yu was about to reach back for him out of habit, but his fin had only peeked out a little when he remembered he couldn't reach, and immediately shrank back. Prince Ting had good eyesight and had already spotted the hidden fin. He was stunned at first, but after a moment he figured out why Xiao Yu had to cover his face and upper body. It was a little surprising. Prince Ting coughed slightly. How was he going to comfort Xiao Yu if he wouldn't let him get close? Looking around, Prince Ting spotted a bamboo stick. Li Yu noticed it as well. He and Prince Ting had to communicate somehow. Perhaps they could use this bamboo stick to pass along messages? Li Yu waited for him eagerly, but then, as he watched, Prince Ting cut off half of his sleeve, tied it to the bamboo stick, and slowly brought the stick closer to him. The sleeve on the bamboo stick lightly caressed the top of his head. This movement, Li Yu froze. It was like Prince Ting was gently touching his head the same way he'd done countless times before. All right, everyone. So that concludes the reading of chapters 93 through 96. I hope you all enjoyed them. I'm going to go over my notes starting from the tippity top. So, one of the things that I thought was really funny about after they had kids was Prince Ting feeling like jealous or a little bit perturbed by the kids basically taking over Li Yu's space. And it was just kind of like, sir, what were you expecting after having not one, not two, not three, but 4 babies? Like, sir, I know you've never had children before, but babies are a handful and they all need extra love and care and attention, okay? So the whole the honeymoon phase of having that time to themselves and all that stuff, that was pre-pregnancy, pre-babies, okay? The other thing is when their wedding robes were described, oh my gosh, they sounded so lovely, and I just wanted to see them in person, especially when it was talking about both of them wearing the jade figures of each other that were for the fishy pond. That was so cute. Anyway, the other thing is when the babies were like having their talk with each other while their dads were getting ready for the wedding. That was so cute. I swear, I love these babies. They're so cute. And I think it's cool that they have like an upper hand, at least I think smart wise, because they understand the human language already, and they're just babies. And so it's like, I feel like as they get older, they're going to be really advanced when it comes to speaking and eloquency and all those things. But I think they'll be able to catch on to things a lot easier because they already understand so much. Let's see about that though. And the other thing concerning the wedding is, I'm not gonna lie, Ye Qinghuan made my heart soar. When it said that he traveled that far to be there for the wedding, I was like, oh, you're such a great cousin, for all the competition and stuff they be doing. It was so cute. That was adorable. And I need to find other words than cute and adorable. Anyway, on page 185, I want to explain something to you all because it talked about a xiniang, and that was the person or the woman that was by Li Yu's side. So basically, a xiniang is the woman that accompanies the bride when she is married into the husband's family. She's basically responsible for teaching the bride proper etiquette. So that's who that lady was that was with Li Yu before, everything was officially done with. Let's see. When it came to this tribulation, or basically Li Yu needing to go through this trial in order to fully turn into a human, I actually think it was very smart for him to be like, okay, hold on, let me go talk to my husband about this first, because he could have, in his excitement, been like, yeah, okay, let's just get this over with, I'm ready to start now, without giving Prince Ting the proper warning or preparation, and he definitely would have failed. That's my personal opinion. But something as serious as that, him turning into a merman or Manmer, was very important. Very good decision making on talking to Prince Ting first. The other thing I wanted to mention was when Yeshutsu told Sibao to call him Yeshushu. So Shushu is one way to say uncle. So Yeshushu, uncle, basically. There are several other ways to say uncle. There's 舅舅, 伯伯, or 伯父. And they all have different moments like, okay, this is father's older brother, father's younger brother, all that crap. Anyway, here we go. Shushu is the most important one. And then before Liu turned into his, well, right now, Manmer, he said he thought that he was feeling guilty because of the quote-unquote white lie about being a Yao. But I think I said it in a previous video before. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know Yao history, but this is fiction, so people have wiggle room to play around. But I really genuinely feel like Li Yu is a Yao. I mean, it'd be different if he was in a situation like Shan Qingqiu, where he could transmigrate into a human body and then boom, that was literally it. If anything, he could be detected as like possessing a demon, possessing a human, but he was just human form. That was it. Whereas Liu has the whole fish human thing going on. And yeah, I mean, he does have to go through this trial or tribulation or test in order to elevate to the next level of being able to stay human. So if you ask me, I mean, I think you are a Yao, and you've got this higher being, the system, telling you what you have to do in order to accomplish what you want, who's been giving you quests and things that you have to do in order to receive rewards, in order to get extra time as a human, to do this, to do that, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, you know, it may not be in the traditional sense of a Yao, maybe not, but I think you're a Yao, buddy. That's totally fine. And then the last thing I wanted to say, because I just thought it was cool, I don't know if the author did this on purpose, but I kind of feel like they did, because in any other occasion where I've read something like this happening, I believe it was on purpose. But on the last page of the chapter Fishy Tribulation, when it said that Prince Ting had cut his sleeve off and, you know, was using it to blah, 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 that is symbolic for cut sleeve, which for those of you who don't know is the name for homosexuals, or specifically for gay people. And the way to say that in Mandarin is duan shu. So I thought it was interesting that he cut his sleeve there, because I was like, haha, cut sleeve. Anyway, that's all I have to say on this. I'm sure you guys, well, maybe not, I don't know, would like an update on things. So first, I really just want to say thank you to everyone for your well wishes and for your understanding on me needing to take this break. I genuinely really needed it, and I just love that you all were so understanding and were very encouraging as well, because it's been quite the rough process. Things are still not 100% better, but I've got some things that will hopefully manage the pain or, you know, suppress it a bit. So I'm just like waiting these next couple of weeks to see like how my body responds to the birth control, is what it is, to, you know, lessen the pain. On the bright side, despite the confusing fact that I've still been experiencing a lot of pain, my hemorrhagic cyst, or whatever kind of ovarian cyst it is, has gone down drastically from where it was before, which is, like I said, the confusing part for both my doctor and myself. So it was like, why is it hurting that much if it's going down? But anyway, the point is, again, thank you all so much for your understanding. And, you know, I won't go into so much detail that is irrelevant, but I'll always be upfront and honest with you guys about my condition and what's going on as it pertains to what I'll be doing on this channel, because I never want you guys to feel like I just up and disappear, or I just up and abandoned you, taking a break without saying something. Now, of course, if something happens and I end up in the emergency room and then I'm gone for a little bit, you know, obviously, and I can't alert you, I'm in a coma, you know, something crazy like that, I can't alert you. But if it's within my power to do so, I will always keep you guys abreast and just let you know, because I know you guys are understanding, but at the same time, there is a certain expectation for my YouTube channel, and that is to release chapters of the books that I'm reading. And so if things are changing, I want to keep you up to date. So anyway, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed these chapters. Thank you all so much for your kind support and for all of your referrals. I've been seeing lots of comments on people saying, someone suggested me to your channel and I love it. And I'm just like, you guys, you're so kind. So anyway, I wish you all the best. Have a great day or a great night, and I'll see you next time. 我爱你们.